I want to tell you of a story, and it's not 12 years a slave. You see, the Israelites were held in bondage far too many days. But God, He called a man named Moses to lead them into freedom. See, Moses was a Hebrew, but since young belonged to Egypt, his mother gave him up so he could have a better life. But Moses was not a perfect man, especially in God's sight. He was a murderer, he stuttered, and at times flaunted his courage. But that's who God loves to use when He's revealing His true purpose. So, God, He came to Moses one day in a burning bush, urging that he free his people from Egypt's ungodly pursuit. The task at hand was heavy. He doubted he could do it. He pleaded out to God to let his brother Aaron pursue it. See, God's so gracious and destined for Moses to be pushed to greatness. He allowed Aaron to be used, but Moses' staff was what God used to shake them. Going up to Pharaoh time and time again, pleading for him to let his people go, God hardened Pharaoh's heart again and again. So why would God do that if He had all the power? You see, glory comes from the impossible. He was proving at each milestone. Plague after plague, He wouldn't give in. Even seeing Moses' staff turn into snakes and back again. Flies and gnats, locusts and boils, frogs and darkness. Still He wouldn't let go and resisted just as God has told him so. Just as God had promised. But finally God said, the Passover is here. Place the blood of the lamb atop your door and do not fear. The firstborn of every Egyptian was killed. The Hebrews were safe. The angels of death spared them for God's sake. So shook by this happening, Pharaoh said, let them free. In a hurry, they grabbed their dough, which they ate and prepared without yeast. But as they fled, he had a change of heart. He chased them down with all of his army. He still desired their labor as it brought him a lot of money. They made it to the Red Sea. They didn't understand how they could cross over. God told Moses to stretch his staff right over the water. The Red Sea then parted, and land was now dry. Not even muddy footprints beneath as they cried, freedom upon us. But Pharaoh was near. As they entered behind them, the sea swallowed all of them. The Israelites made it to the other side, praising Moses and praising God. But then as they drank the water was really bitter. They complained and started to reconsider. God, he was gracious. And as Moses prayed for them, with the tap of a tree into the water, it turned sweet right before them. They all rejoiced and came to a place with wells of great water and palm trees that was safe. So beautiful to them, they had never experienced. God had prepared a place for them, and it all started with Moses' obedience. They all pitched tents and stayed for a while, but soon became troubled and doubted if the promised land could be found. You see, they ran out of food and complained. So God in turn blessed them. Manna every morning. God said ration, but they were tested. Some ate more than needed, and some hid manna in tents. The next morning, the manna was so bad, it was making them all sick. See, when God says you should do something, have faith, be still, and listen. His grace is available most of all when his children wait and listen. Weariness grew, and they wandered 40 years. See, faith opens doors, but they doubted and feared. When they finally approached it, a test was then given. Leader Moses was faced with a hefty decision. The crowd had approached and demanded a movement. With rebellion before him, he lessened himself to them. He gave them instruction, which made them rejoice. He compromised his faith and turned from God's voice. You see, God had agreed that they go scout the land, but Moses embellished and created his own plan. The decision at the waters of Meribah changed his life altogether. He chose to turn from God, fearing the Israelites' rebellion. Sin released him from promise and caused him to die. Yet God still used it as an example to keep the Israelites in line. So the 12 spies went to seek what they could. You see, even though the land was promised, they had to put in work for the good. God gives us promise, but puts it in our reach. The journey and lesson is for him to teach. And when we are delivered and finally conquer, we can give him the glory for all we've encountered. In the wilderness 40 years, which should have been 11 days, led into the promised land by Joshua, they could finally say, God led us to this. It was all worth the journey. Had we trusted him more, we could have been living in his glory. Don't doubt in fear and die right before you reach your promise. When God delivers you, wait for instruction. And when frustrated, just pray and sit quiet. God will order our steps, but only one by one. His way is a journey, not a race. Get the victory so you can say that with Jesus, I won.